Well, welcome, everyone, to tonight's conversation. And we're going to be talking about growing St. Louis plant and life science ecosystem and harvesting commercial success. I'm Molly Klein, and I'm a plant scientist by academic training, and every day I'm an advocate for plant science. I'm chair of the Conversations Committee, and it's a real honor to welcome you all here tonight. So thank you for coming on a cold evening. I'd like to also thank and acknowledge the Friends Committee as well as the Conversation Committee for their continued support in having conversations continue, and we're in the 11th year. And it's through friends and a supportive community that not only are we able to have programs like tonight, but that support also helps the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center carry out its very important work and mission. And as a plant scientist, I think about this a lot. And that mission of the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, to improve the human condition through plant science, feed the hungry, improve human health, to preserve and renew the environment, and what we're going to really focus on tonight, to enhance the St. Louis region as a world center for plant science. Just curious, how many people in the room, this is their first visit to the Danforth Center? Okay, great, welcome. And we hope that you'll want to join us again. Tonight, we're going to do something new and exciting and very modern. We are going to live tweet questions during the question and answer period. Now, don't get worried if you're not a tweeter, okay? I'm not. That's a 215 goal for me. But everybody, if you saw these cards and got one, you can put your question down and they'll still be collected and your question will be converted to a tweet. But as you can see, here's what you have to address it to if you are a tweeter and what the hashtag is, seen up here on the screen. And why are we doing that? We did that at the Fall Symposium. And you know what? It is a great way to get additional people to be able to participate remotely and continue a little conversation maybe for days to come. It really helps spread the word, so this is very exciting. Tonight's program is being recorded, and it'll be up on the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center website next week. And I'd like to start with introducing our panel and our moderator, so we'll move to that. So our moderator is Vijay Chauhan, and he is co-founder and CEO of Arvigenics and BioSTL's Israel Company Attraction Project, and he's an entrepreneur. Tom Osha, and he's Managing Director of Innovation and Economic Development for Wexford Science and Technology, a bio-realty company. Tom. And Sam Fiorello, Chief Operating Officer, Senior Vice President of Administration of the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, and President of Bridge Park. Don Rubin. And Don is President and CEO of BioSTL. And David Smoller, entrepreneur and General Partner, Cultivation Capital Life Science Fund, and Chief Business Officer, Horizon Discovery. So, gentlemen, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Molly. Good evening, everybody. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you all because it's a conversation about the ecosystem in plant and life sciences that has been built over a long period of time. In fact, this is a story that's 14 to 16 years in the making. And the great thing about the story is all of you have had a part in it. The cake is ready. It's ready to come out of the oven. And tonight, we're going to unfold that story. So joining me are an excellent panel. And I want to start off by having Tom, who is not from St. Louis, who's an expert on what ecosystems that are in this plant and life sciences around the country look like, give us some perspective of what a great ecosystem is. So Tom, a little bit, maybe you may want to start off with a little bit about your background and
Sure.
what you do, and then.
All right. Thank you, Vijay, and welcome. Thank you all for coming, and Dr. Danforth, thank you for the faith that you put in Wexford. Actually, a number of years ago when we first came to do that Bridge Park building that's next door. And in a lot of ways, that is one of the keys to creating a great innovation ecosystem. It isn't just great science. It isn't just great resources. It isn't just the buildings, but it is leadership, it is partnership, it is civic engagement, and it is really the alignment that people have together to achieve something. There's a lot, in a little bit about my background. So what I do for Wexford, we have 13 projects that are around the United States. We're expanding into Europe. We were acquired about a year ago by Biomed Realty Trust, which gives us about 17.5 million square feet. Makes us the largest landowner in life sciences in the world. We are the second largest landholder in Cambridge next to the university. So we're talking about a large scale here. What I do for the firm is I advise universities, cities, governments, I advise NATO on innovation policy. So I travel about 280 days a year. I see about 60 to 75 cities. I see about 100 innovation districts. And everybody out there, over the last year or so, since the Brookings Institution came out with the report, Metropolitan Revolution, and the latest one, Rise of the Innovation Districts, all believe that an innovation district will be the key to taking their city forward. It's tough, though, because while you may have desire, you need some ingredients. And so I'll throw a couple of ingredients out, and maybe that'll be a conversation starter for the rest of them. The number one ingredient you need is talent. Talent trumps everything, and that includes money. And as a matter of fact, and probably David will talk about this, money tends to follow talent. And so to have renewable sources of talent, like what's being achieved here at the Danforth Center, what's happening at WashU, what's going on at Harris Stowe, what's going on at the St. Louis Community College, what's going on with the FIRST program, where the Super Bowl of robotics and engineering is here in St. Louis. All of these renewable sources of talent are what both attract entrepreneurs to start companies, they're what bring large companies here and enable the companies you have to grow. The second thing that you need is a collaborative environment where you can achieve scale. So it's a very interesting video up there. And I see videos like this on a weekly basis. They're very impressive with a lot of young folks with great energy and desire wanting to start something. What happens, though, is if they're left without the ability to partner, to collaborate for scale, they can never really create much more than just an interesting idea of 2 or 3 people. Now, what makes this very interesting for our conversation here is this is how innovation also creates inclusion. Because as you need to scale a company up, you don't just need PhDs. You need people who can do science on the bench, who can pipette, who can maintain growth chambers, which now opens up opportunity on a number of different platforms. You also need large companies, growing companies, startups, universities, shared resources. You need financing. You need organizations like BioSTL that can tie all of these threads together in a fabric. That is important. And then the last thought I'll leave you with, so we can keep this conversation really going, is you also need to think regionally. So while we talk about innovation districts as being places, they're really innovation constellations that have different stars, and those stars need to be connected. When I look across the country, what excites me about St. Louis is unlike a lot of places, St. Louis has this opportunity to create a constellation where I can go from idea to actually manufacturing at scale and everything in between in the same place. But instead of discretely competing as either different parts of the city or city and county or different clusters, plant science versus IT, software versus biotechnology, all of this has to come together. And when you think about the resources that are here, whether it's what's going on in the Danforth Center, whether it's the new CIC, the first opening of the Cambridge Innovation Center outside Cambridge or Boston at the 4240 building in Cortex. You think about what's happening downtown at T-Rex. You think about what's going on in a Helix. All of these things being knit together give you an ecosystem unlike any other. And then you put in St. Louis's proud history and tradition in manufacturing. You put in its excellent institutions of higher education, and you have something that can truly be a game changer.
Great. Thank you, Tom, for...
Thank you.
Okay.
Games.
go.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Right.
Covered
Tweet
pretty much
that.
everything.
Yeah,
Cover the waterfront.
yeah. He's here till Thursday.
So thank you, Tom, for giving us a very rich palette of what an ecosystem looks like. Don, can you share with us the biosciences ecosystem, the life sciences ecosystem that has been created over a nice long period of time that you've been involved in from day one? How it started, what does it contain, what makes it special?
Sure, and a lot of what Tom was talking about sounds very familiar. When we started this work, early 2001, and I say we, Bill Danforth is the one who brought me along to work in this area. St. Louis was known at that time as a place with great medical schools and great universities, big corporations with strong R&D programs, but there was not an entrepreneurial infrastructure. There was not the support system to mentor and provide capital and all the things, almost all of the things that Tom talked about. And certainly Dr. Danforth observed that individuals who had great ideas coming out of the universities, et cetera, were having to go to the East Coast or the West Coast to get what they needed, capital and support and facilities and all of those things. And so we set out in a very deliberate way to build a lot of those pieces. But a lot of people here are familiar with a lot of the things that now exist that didn't exist at that time. On the capital side, helping to jumpstart venture capital and create new companies through an organization called the Biogenerator, which is now a subsidiary of BioSTL. And developing facilities in places like Cortex and next door in Bridge Park, and of course Wexford plays a role in both of those areas. But one thing that we had a head start, I think, that was very unique compared to a lot of other places, was the approach from the very beginning and the leadership of Dr. Danforth. When we started this effort, this building was coming out of the ground at the same time. Had not yet opened, 2001. And of course, Dr. Danforth was the visionary behind this effort. But there was a parallel effort that was taking place at the same time in building this comprehensive infrastructure so that ideas that come out of this amazing place and ideas that come out of Washington University and St. Louis University and other places in St. Louis would have a path forward to create economic benefit for this community, to create companies, jobs, so that we would capture that economic growth rather than having it go off to the East Coast or the West Coast. And one of the great advantages that we had was that Bill had the capability of convening the important influencers in our community, the resources in our community, and in a very collaborative way. Tom mentioned the importance of collaboration. Collaboration has been an important value of BioSTL from the beginning as we internalize that principle from Dr. Danforth and have built a very trustful environment among universities and institutions and entrepreneurs and nonprofits and foundations and the public sector as well that has given us really a competitive advantage over a lot of other places. I find that and we've found that when we've talked to companies from other places, the collaborative spirit here, every place talks about collaboration, but when you scratch below the surface, it kind of falls apart sometimes. Here it's very real, and I think others on the outside recognize that. And yes, we have all these things. We're on the path to having all the things that Tom talked about, but that special sauce may be the collaborative spirit that we have here in St. Louis.
Great. Sam, you want to share some perspective on the plant sciences side, because actually these are parallel projects coming out of one man's vision here.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay. Just give me a second to show how hip I am. I'm going to tweet my answer.
He's not really doing it.
I wouldn't know how to tweet if it was placed in front of me. So, thanks for that, Vijay. I apologize for those of you in the audience who've heard me say this over and over again, but this is, when we set out to create this research park, the Bridge Park, on the campus of the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center, we understood in order to be successful, we would have to create something that would offer the Dave Smolders of this world and the Vijay's a value proposition to advance our business. That just having bricks and mortar and great real estate is not enough. It's a commodity, you can do it anywhere. So our tagline is research, resources, and relationships. And our value proposition is embedded in that tagline. First, our research. If you're a plant science company or an ag tech company, and you're small or medium and indeed even large, like the 4th largest seed company in the world coming here from Germany, and you care about being next to some of the best plant research in the world, come here. The Danforth Plant Science Center is the leading plant research institute in the world. There are more plant PhDs in our region than anywhere in the world, with over 750 of them. So that first R, you want to be in your research, come here. The second R, resources. If you need access to very specialized core facilities, like greenhouses and growth rooms and growth chambers, you need those to advance your business. It would cost you millions of dollars to build on your own. You simply can't do that as a small or medium-sized company. Come here and leverage our investment, our community's investment. We'll charge you for it. We don't give it away, but we'll charge you for it just in time when you need it at an affordable rate. And the third R is relationships, and it's maybe the most hardest to get your hands around, most amorphous, but in many ways the most important. And that is, we create a network of folks that are going to help you advance your business. Investors, key strategics who are going to buy your technology or your business, government officials, thought leaders, and we take time not only to insert you into existing networks, but indeed build new networks. And one example of that is 6 years ago, before the first building opened, we created something called the Ag Innovation Showcase. And that showcase is a gathering of those categories of attendees I talked about. We have a global call for business plans. We have a selection committee. We have strategics that come on board. And it has become, in 6 years, the premier event. And we get attendees from the East Coast and West Coast, from across the globe. And it has helped us to build a brand, add value to tenants, and in fact attract tenants to the park.
So Sam, give us an example of a company that came into that Ag Innovation Showcase and now has really achieved a lot of success.
Yeah, there are numbers of examples, but I'll give you one of the most recent and one of those that I'm most excited about, and that's a company called New Leaf. In fact, the founders of New Leaf, one from Boston, Steve, and Tom from Maine, I think are here in the audience somewhere. Just if you are, raise your hand. I saw you out in the cocktail party. These are folks that had tremendous access to intellectual property. They came to an ag showcase several years ago with an idea and said, we, in order to move this idea forward, need access to great research, to funding, to strategics, to partners, some space. We worked with them. They came the next year and presented their fledgling plan at the Ag Showcase. They decided that they're going to open their operations here in St. Louis, in our community, at Bridge Park. They have, in these short years, had 2 successful funding rounds, an A round of $7 million and then a B round of $17 million. And they've raised those monies from venture capitalists that would never have considered ag tech as an investment. And they happen to be from the East and West Coast, and they happen to say, the best place for us to put our money, for our investors to invest, is not in Boston or San Francisco, but here in St. Louis, because we think it's your best bet to advance the business and win.
So thank you, Sid. So you heard from Don and Sam what ecosystems in the ag and in the plant sciences and life sciences look like. I want to have Dave tell you a little bit about, from an entrepreneur's perspective, the journey he's been through and what's changed for Dave as an entrepreneur in the last several years, and what are some of the gaps that we need to fill. But start with what you got.
Sure. I mean, I think if you look at my personal experience, it is sort of the evolution of St. Louis. I started out, my first company was 1992. There was no funding, no lab space. There was none of this we're talking about. I'll give you an example. We had to find an office in recessed St. Louis across from Section H housing where drug deals were done in the alleys because it was $500. There was no lab space, so we went to Home Depot and got a unpainted kitchen furniture and a Formica top. That was the lab bench. And then our Bunsen burner was a propane tank and a Bunsen burner. Now, today that would be, anti-OSHA and safety. Right, and I can talk, and after this, I'd be glad to talk to you about the fire we had that I put out. I've actually put out lots of fires. It must be something literally. I'm doing, yeah. Now, so that's, and funding, I borrowed $5,000 from my dad and mom, right? That's, the ultimate of family and friends round, right? And we grew that business, got acquired, and finally from 2 people to 250 people. A great story, but really difficult. Now, second company in the 2000s, things are getting better. There's some lab space. There's an angel network. We raised a couple $1 million and then got acquired by the European Merck. But still not critical mass, right? You need critical mass. Now look today, right? Third company, there's, you look at the kind of funding, lab space, mentors, there is, if you look at each component, funding. We talked about mom and dad, maybe angels. Today we have the state of Missouri, the Missouri Technology Corporation. Biogeneration and bio-STL are great catalysts to startups, not only just in funding these early stage companies, but giving them lab space. Another point, we just talked about lab space in Wexford and Cortex and Plant Life Science Centers in Bridge Park. So there's places to go and not have to buy your lab bench from Home Depot. Thank God for Home Depot. So you have lab space, you have funding. There's an Archangel group that's much broader today. So you look at Gil Bickle started a group called Archangels, has provided $38 million worth of funding into the community from high net worth individuals, right? You take that, Biogenerator, the state money, groups like us, like Cultivation Capital, and now you can raise $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million, and that's really crucial. But at the same time, we mentioned about relationships and people. We are lucky in the fact that we have mentors in this community. We have great corporations. I see Phil Needleman in the audience. I was a trainee of Phil Needleman, right? Many of us were, right? So there are people that have learned from the best in corporations like Monsanto and Pfizer that are out there helping these, most of them founders or scientists, right? So we need that mentorship. We need those people that understand business, that know corporate America, that can provide that kind of influence to these, scientists with ideas and pipettements and sometimes really ugly Bunsen burners. So, yeah.
Looking at Dave, he's the one guy with jeans up here, so he's the entrepreneur.
Right. My wife was scared when I put on the coat. I am a T-shirt and jeans kind of guy. But I'm starting to scratch, actually.
I think about the 20 years that you've talked about as an entrepreneur in St. Louis. When I started this 14 years ago, I'm sure entrepreneur was a dirty word in St. Louis, right? When you met someone who was an entrepreneur, you immediately thought, I wonder which company he got laid off from. Why would anybody choose to be an entrepreneur? And St. Louis now has become a very entrepreneur-centric place where we put an entrepreneur on a pedestal and we bring all the resources we can around that individual to help that person succeed and make the connections they can. It's such a different place than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I think you bring up another point, which is culture, right? Really you need culture, and I use the word flexibility. So you look at support groups like legal and accounting and all those things. There are really good firms out there, Pulcinelli, Lewis Rice, that are really thinking more entrepreneurial-like, right? Not just, send you a bill and, you're worried about how much time you're spending and so forth. They're really thinking about the global aspect of your company, how to help you. It's not all about billable hours. And that's the kind of culture you see in California, right? And so that's hopefully moving to St. Louis, and it's starting to happen. It's not all there yet, but it's starting to happen.
So we've got a very vibrant tweeting audience here. I've got so many questions coming at me. I'm going to give them a chance to voice their questions. So the question is, what kind of talent do we need to attract, and what can we develop here? Dave, I want you to take a shot at that first, and then have.
Yeah, it's no doubt you need leadership that's come out of corporations like Pfizer and things like that. But you also have to have people that really want to give back, that want to mentor, that want to be able to. I mentor about 7 different companies, and I will get up and 9 o'clock at night and listen to them cry about this or excited about that, and a lot of it's holding their hands. I just talked to one of the groups yesterday that wanted an introduction to another company and help them articulate what they want from a large corporation, and he's just going to come into my office. And we're going to get on the phone and act like we're in a big company and all that kind of good stuff. But you need not only smart people, but people that really want to give back, and roll up their sleeves, right? This is really rolling up sleeve kind of work. So, yeah, about it.
Let me, if I can, do one other thing I think you need, and that is you need folks from the communities that you're working in as well. And so let me give you an example. Wexford has a number of projects that sit adjacent to some very economically challenged communities. And we always work so that projects like this, while they're great for attracting PhDs or MDs or scientists of great note and respect, also are seen as generators of opportunity for others. One of the projects that we've created that perhaps is worth thinking about here is a program called the 4+2+2. It's in Baltimore, Maryland, in one of the poorest communities there. There is a high school called the Vivian T. Thomas High School, right? And that high school was one of the worst performing high schools anywhere. We worked with 7 neighborhood groups to create what was called the Southwest Partnership, along with the University of Maryland, to take Vivian Thomas and within that to create some programs in life and biosciences. And the students who went through those programs would be guaranteed admission to the Baltimore City Community College. Now that college sits in the 2nd floor of the research park that we've created with the University of Maryland. Every student who comes through is guaranteed an internship with one of the companies within that park. And it's a wonderful two-way street, because not only do the students get experiential learning with real companies, but in a lot of cases, young startups who are strapped for people get additional resources. Those students, at about a 90% rate, are usually hired at that point right into the schools. But those who choose to go on are guaranteed admission to the University of Maryland and can complete their other 2 years. Now, the way they can do it without needing to leave that neighborhood. And so what it's done is, instead of taking kids out of the community going to somewhere else, it brings great resources into that community to make that a better place as well. And what we've started to see are some of those students now coming up with their own ideas, their own technologies, their own ways for making it better and bringing it back into the labs of their companies. It's a great thing to think about here. It's already started with St. Louis Community College here at the Bridge Park. I think there's plans to look at how this might come to Cortex and how you might be able to do more of that as well. But you're going to need to continue to increase that talent base. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself at the only able to scale so far. And those of you who may know Jim McKelvey know that he is very passionate about this when it comes to software and IT coding. And in fact, Launch Code happens to be a resident of the CIC in 4240, trying to get more coders in town to support that infrastructure as well.
So that's a great jump-off point to what we have going on here in St. Louis. Sam, there's a question on how can we, it says, actually, how does the Danforth Center strengthen and support startup companies at Bridge Park? So it speaks to this community college angle too, local examples.
It's a great point. I think it's no accident that every one of Wexford's research parks is anchored to a research enterprise, a university or a research center like the Danforth Center. As we build homegrown companies, either they're spin-offs from the Danforth Center from the labs here, some of Jim Carrington's teams to go start their own company and we keep them in town, or they're attracted here, it's vitally important, since these are science-based companies, that they're connected to an engine of science. Culturally and interacting with scientists here. Here, the tenants at Bridge Park come here, walk across the parking lot, and have lunch in our cafeteria every day. And they have lunch with our principal investigators and postdocs and technicians. We have regular scientific gatherings in this conference room, and we invite all of the attendees from Bridge Park. So they're not in an inexpensive lab space on Page Avenue, but they're isolated. That's very painful. The reality is that every single one of the Bridge Park tenants could find space that's a fraction of what they're paying here. But they see the value, and embedded in the value is a robust, thriving anchor institution, in our case, the Danforth Plant Science Center. And we do everything we can, whether it's connection through core facilities or events or scientific symposia, that we add value back, and it's a symbiotic relationship, and it's a tight community.
That's great. And in fact, the St. Louis Community College being here is a fantastic contributor to the ecosystem. My own company has got 3 interns from the St. Louis Community College. We got the first 150 hours of their time free, gave them a chance to learn about us about them, and then we've hired 2 of them, and we're looking to hire the 3rd. So it just shows you how the system is actually working, Tom, the way you described. So one of the things that we all know is that it's great to build a startup ecosystem, a knowledge economy that is serving people with PhDs, masters, and so on. But we have a community with lots of different educational levels and skill sets. Don, can you talk a little bit about what we're doing in St. Louis from an inclusion standpoint? So this idea of a knowledge-based economy, the life sciences, plant sciences innovation is more inclusive and is taking the total community into perspective.
Sure, yeah. Starting in 2008, I think, BioSTL now has been convening on a several times a year basis a group around an inclusion issue and looking at how to involve more of the underrepresented groups into the biosciences. And those include women and minorities and veterans and other groups as well. And those meetings have, first of all, raised the level of conversation, have raised awareness, has allowed a lot of organizations to learn from others. So, for example, some of the startups have never thought of or haven't had the resources to think about policies that some of the larger organizations have in place in terms of minority suppliers and vendors and other kinds of internal inclusion. So learning from each other has been important. Most recently, about probably 9 or 10 months ago now, early 2014, we launched a more formal bioscience inclusion initiative. We have a grant from a foundation from New York, the Blackstone Foundation. My colleague Ben Johnson has helped to conceptualize that, and we have leadership from Dr. Cheryl Watkins-Moore, who has have now led an effort that has sort of a funnel, if you think of it. The first part is reaching out and building awareness particularly among women and minority groups, awareness about the bioscience industry. It's a mysterious black box to a lot of folks. They read about life sciences in St. Louis, but they don't really know how to access that. So building awareness is number one. And then among that group, and in fact, our first event was here in this room. I think we had something like 250 people, which was way more than we expected for our first event, in building that awareness. And then beyond awareness, identifying individuals who then had sort of an entrepreneurial bent, and taking that group and then putting them through some training. And we have partnered with Cortex. They have a sort of a boot camp for entrepreneurs called the Square One program, and putting those individuals through that boot camp, and out of that identifying individuals with promising ideas that could really become the next leading entrepreneurs, and connecting those individuals to the resources in the community, the financial resources, the mentoring, and the other aspects that are so important to helping entrepreneurs succeed. So we're still finishing our first year at that program, and we think it's something we really want to ramp up, but we've seen enormous enthusiasm for it. There really is pent-up demand among groups that have been underrepresented in the biosciences to become more involved.
That's great. So there's a lot going on in St. Louis. You've heard about the ecosystems that they've talked about. There are two places that I would recommend you all try out. There's an organization or a place called the T-Rex. It's a building in downtown that has a fantastic, vibrant ecosystem. If you went into that building, you'd think you were in one of the startup incubators in San Francisco or Boston. Give it a try. There's a guy called Brian Matthews. Have him give you a tour. You will be totally infected by the startup entrepreneurial movement. The second one is called the Venture Cafe. That's in the CIC 4240 building. Every Thursday between 3 and 7 p.m. You should go there and see what's happening. It's just started in the second or third month. They have about 180 to 200 people showing up every Thursday. Boston started this 14 years ago. They have 350 people coming. They are amazed that so quickly we have 180 to 200 people coming here on a regular basis. It's a great place to meet a lot of entrepreneurs working on a lot of startups. What you saw in the video is just an example of what you'll experience. The reason I bring this up is because for our kids, St. Louis can become a destination for them to come back after they go off to college and get their great degrees from Harvard and MIT and so on. There's no reason for them to stay there. They can come back. And so any one of you want to take that, maybe you, Dave, can tell us why the kids should be coming back?
Still trying to get rid of them. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. I mean, you want a vibrant place that people, they can come and contribute. I mean, and that's key. I mean, it's, you know, it is really, you know, there's been a great change in St. Louis. I want to say that the journey isn't over yet, though. I really think if my kids are going to come back, we need to get the community involved. There are 55,000 accredited investors out there. Only a fraction of them are investing into startups. There are lots of educated, leaders in this group, in this community that are retired and want to help. We need to engage them. You know, you look at funding. You know, we talk about these fundings going from, you know, a few thousand. Now we're in the few thousands of dollars. Now we're going to a few millions, but we're at a gap. These companies need tens of millions of dollars to get to the next stage as well. And so we need to be able to bring in venture capital from the East Coast and West Coast. Why, you know, are we just a flyover state? You know, can we get them to stop? I think we've seen great examples of that. New Leaf is one. A company called Adarza that I'm involved in just got Siemens Ventures to come all the way from Boston to invest into a Cortex company. But those are just anecdotal examples. We need to say that about almost a large percentage of our companies. So, so I'm looking forward to my kids are 17 and 15. So hopefully by the time they come back from college, yeah, we should be right there. No problem. And she can pay for her own horse and all that stuff. So it's good. Yeah.
So Dave's got a problem we got to solve, right? So I know, Don, you've been working with Bill on trying to get more of our state government behind this. There are other states in our nation that have made big bets in entrepreneurship. Missouri is not where it needs to be. It could be helpful for this audience to understand how they can maybe help push this to the next level. Maybe you want to talk about the efforts in that area.
In terms of bringing the state along.
DC and so on.
Yeah, so the state has been on the sidelines a bit, an enthusiastic cheerleader on the sidelines, I guess. A lot of very positive rhetoric from both sides of the aisle about great things that are happening in life sciences, the great potential. But unlike some of our peers, they haven't always been there with the resources. There are states like Ohio and Pennsylvania. It's not just the big California and Boston. I mean, Texas, Kansas, that have programs in place that are order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude larger than what Missouri has. I've been quoted coming back from Ohio as which has an amazing program called the Third Frontier, where they've passed over $1 billion bonding over multiple years to fund the kind of things that we're talking about. And I came back from Ohio and I was quoted as saying I have a decimal point envy, which is true. Because we come back and we're scratching for a tiny fraction of that to support statewide the kind of programs that we do. The best vehicle for supporting this kind of activity is something called the Missouri Technology Corporation that was created by the state in legislation back in the 90s, and it has evolved into a very professional and effective group. In full disclosure, I'm on the board, but I take credit for making it as effective as it is. But it matches funding into companies, so it's been an important source of funding into young companies, and it provides grants to organizations, many of which that were just discussed just now, T-Rex and BioGenerator and others get support to help support entrepreneurs. And yet it's just a very tiny bit of it's a very slim pie, and our goal is to really grow that pie 5x, 10x from where it is right now. So anyone who knows a legislator or a governor or like that.
But that is the good example, right? The experiment has been done, right? We've done the little experiment with MTC.
Prove the concept.
The concept worked fantastic. MTC, BioGenerator, Archangel cultivation now has critical mass to get to that next level. Without MTC, we would not have been there. And so we need the experiment's over. Let's move on to the next level of funding from the state.
So I want to use that as a jump-off point. Tom, as you look at what we have here, I want to have a 2-part question. Why did you all bet on St. Louis? And what do we need to do to take it to the next level?
So the bet on St. Louis was an easy one. And it really comes down to partnership and vision. And so these projects work when there is commitment and people understand that the project is going to help the institution and the region do things that it can't do. And so our bet in St. Louis came because of the personal relationship between Jim Behrens and Dr. Danforth, who both shared this knowledge that if there was a Bridge Park and it was here next to this powerhouse of innovation and intellectual pursuit, research and discovery, that opportunity, not the buildings themselves, but the activation that those buildings would create, would be able to create this ecosystem, right? That the Danforth Center was very porous in how discoveries got out. It would attract companies that would want to be next to it. It would attract talent that would attract money. And so in that environment where there's the vision and leadership to say, I know that we can achieve this because it will allow us to grow the research enterprise, support the entrepreneurial community, attract larger businesses, provide jobs across the board, and then most importantly, to also create this vibrant environment that is going to get people to come back. So that is what did it. And the same thing at Cortex with Dennis Lauer and his team. Again, that same commitment and desire. The common theme in both of those is they didn't look at these as real estate plays, which is kind of interesting. We're real estate developers. For us, if you can do the other elements, the programming, the activation, the creating the ecosystem, honestly, the real estate takes care of itself. To answer the second part, what do you need to do to take it to the next level? I'll give you 2 thoughts. The first thought is, don't build silos. And while we're here in this wonderful, the preeminent plant science center in the world, as we move forward into the coming years, you're going to continue to see emerging where IT and engineering are going to become important as well, design, arts, applied mathematics. And so there are a number of cities out there that have very strong life science cores, very strong software and IT cores, and they never talk to each other. And so instead, to create that environment where you're not just building strength in plant sciences or life sciences and bio, but that a software developer and an artist and a musician and a plant scientist have the opportunity to come together. And so that becomes very, very important. That is critical. And that also, you mentioned the Venture Cafe Foundation. So I go to the Venture Cafe in Cambridge on a fairly regular basis. And you will see that there. Go to any Wexford project and you see, whether it's Science in the City in Baltimore, Unwind in Norfolk, Virginia, Lunch for Hungry Minds in Philadelphia, those environments to bring dissimilar people together. The second thing, and this is very important for that entrepreneurial community, celebrate their failures. One of the things that is most toxic to an entrepreneur, and particularly those in Midwestern cities like this, I see the same thing in Cincinnati, in Indianapolis, in Louisville, and other places, is there seems to be a stigma to failure. And what happens is, if I fail, I go elsewhere. As soon as I go elsewhere, you're losing that knowledge. You're losing the serial entrepreneur who can be a mentor to others. And you're also creating an environment where it is not okay to fail. So you celebrate that failure because that just continues to be the learning process. Those who are scientists get this, right? And nobody makes a discovery on the first time, and so they understand this. Entrepreneurial community is the same way. And then when they succeed, celebrate those successes. More people know how to win than how to celebrate their success. There's a ton of successes here in St. Louis. It's why we're here. It's why we're doubling down on our involvement. And when I'm in other places, and this is what I do a lot of, over the last year, we have brought a number of people to St. Louis to see what you have achieved. And the cities we've brought them from, you would be surprised because they're cities that people talk about how great their innovation ecosystems already are. We bring them. We bring them here to the Danforth Center. We bring them to Cortex. We show them what St. Louis is achieving. And it's something you should be very proud of.
I want to thank you all for attending this event and paying attention to this great conversation. It's a conversation that will not stop. It will continue. Thank you so much for this evening's attendance.